Typical DJs and beers questions. Are we live? Who's there? Hello. Des from Dublin. Jürgen. Nick. I can see you all. So people start to join us here now. I'm gonna probably, hi there, probably gonna repeat myself a million times tonight by saying everyone who's already online. We'll wait for some more people. But since you're the first guys, I want to say special hi. And obviously, thanks so much for your interest in this masterclass. And since you have it, I hope you really enjoyed it and you get something out of it. So we're here tonight to Grüße aus Nürnberg. Super. We're here tonight from Saudi Arabia. All right. To answer any questions that you still might have. We did get some question in beforehand. And obviously, this will be possible to be rewatched. So we're recording this. So I can, while questions are coming in and everybody's saying hello, Girona, so nice. Pau, Tom, Grüße aus Freiburg, gar nicht so weit weg. Ich bin hier in der Westschweiz. From Ghent, from Bari. Ciao. So we'll start with one of the questions that we got sent in, and while you guys collect questions, or I'm probably going to see them popping up, there's one of the first questions. What do you think of the way, and this is a really interesting question, what do you think of the way some new DJs are gaining fame, non-conventional, mostly digital, YouTube, Twitch, etc., and without climbing the ladder in the club scene? For people thinking about this route, what are the pros and cons in your opinion? I hope this is how it works. I'm going to read this question. I'm going to answer this question right away. So guys, obviously, if you climb the ladder of fame because you're having amazing pictures on your Instagram account, or you're an incredible editor of videos, and you gain fame for let's say other things than your musical selection and your DJing, the pro obviously is you gain quite a following, you gain quite a subscription base on YouTube and on Instagram. The downside is, what is this following worth really? Because if you are in this game for a long term, then music needs to be your foundation, and your art form, may be the DJing, may be the producing, needs to be the foundation of what you're doing. Everything else kind of follows in these footsteps. If you're a great producer, a great DJ, and you have an amazing ability to edit videos, or you have a really amazing ability to take photos, and you have a brutally out there Instagram account that people follow, then that is obviously adds up to becoming, let's say, more famous and more followers in a quicker time. But talking about that foundation, because if you don't have that foundation and your fame is solely based on because you're pretty good with your social media, then what happens when tastes change, when some sort of hype dies down? Then you don't have a foundation, and your following will just jump on the next person who's maybe doing these things better than you do. So the con, the big downside of gaining fame on this is that you're probably not in for the long run. This kind of might work for you if you're more on the commercial side and you just want to have success for 3-4 years, and then you're going to go and do something else. Fine. But I can tell you out of my own experience doing this for almost 30 years now, is that if you build your career on a foundation, which is musical knowledge, technical knowledge, your DJing, your producing skills, then you're in for the long run. And then you don't really need to, and that's, anyways, that's a big issue, even for me. It's like, then you don't need to compare yourself to anyone else in out there, because what you do is coming out of you, is your own experience, and that is very, very unique. Nobody else can have that. They can copy that, but only in their own way. Everybody copies something. Like everything is a copy of something. Everything has been done before in a certain way, but you do it different. And this is what you should lay your foundation on, and then you're in for the long run. If I continue to answer questions like this, we're going to sit here for like 3 years. But I hope that answers that question. I'm going to shoot with the next one. Did you switch from Ableton to Machine in your live sets? Yes, I did, but that was many, 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 many years ago. As I was still, there's maybe a follow-up question which I'm answering right away too. I used to travel with two computers. I mean, I still travel in a way with two computers back in the days when we were still traveling, as I had the luxury to use one computer, my tractor computer, solely for music. I would not really go into the internet with this music. I don't have any emails on there, nothing. It was just solely for music. And the other laptop that I was carrying with me when I was traveling was my email computer and whatever. So when I played early live sets or DJ sets, I basically used both computers with two sound cards as individual setups. I did that because in the early days, obviously, a computer can crash and a cable gets loose. So I always had a backup situation. But technology got so advanced, as you guys know, watching the masterclass, that you can rely on that technology quite a bit. I can rely on my Antelope sound card, and you can rely on your computer. It's just like you can rely on it as much as you relied on a turntable, and that the needle stays on the vinyl, or on CDJs. So you get confidence that your equipment is working because you're taking good care of your equipment. I told you that in the master class too, and that's why you can be pretty sure that nothing is crashing. So I slimmed down my setup for many reasons. It's easier to set it up. Obviously, if you only have one computer, one sound card, it takes less space, but you only have to basically one little things to focus on, and you can focus on the music, and you don't have to look in different sides. When I still was using two computers, I had Ableton Live on one computer and Tractor on the other computer, and they were completely separate from each other. They were not synced. So syncing these two computers is super easy. Basically, just put in the same BPM and just start them and nudge them so they're synced. What I also liked with this system was that the syncing was sometimes fluctuating, so you had a little bit of this vinyl feel with it when you played from two computers. But going on one computer, I didn't really need Ableton anymore, because the software of Machine, standalone Machine, provided everything that I was basically using on Ableton. You can externally send in signals, send and return into the Machine software. You can use native plugins for the Machine, or any other plugins for that matter. And so I didn't really need to use Ableton. So I was basically, and this is what you see on the masterclass, basically playing with Tractor as standalone, obviously, and Machine as standalone. So now I'm going to go down in your chat. Did you get to try the new Machine? Since I'm sitting here, like, there it is. Yeah, I've been playing around with it. It's I mean, pretty similar to the old Machine, but it's an amazing thing that you don't need a computer anymore, right? So this is a great thing. Greetings back to Italy, and thanks that you like the masterclass. I mean, the Q&A window. Here we go. I have the Q&A window. Jürgen, I'm just going to answer. I'm answering all those email questions live, obviously. What is your email address for sending demos? That's a good question. So far, I don't really have one yet. So because I'm kind of only accepting demos from people I know and people who know, but I will sooner or later put a because the thing is, if I publicize a demo email address, I'm in the position of having to go through them and answer to them. that puts me in a certain responsibility towards you guys who send demos, and I don't want to let you down. So until I'm able to do this, I don't have a demo email address, and you just have to kind of find me, right? Um, did you hold on? Where are we? Lily Leopard. Did you ever have an moment when you realized you made it as a professional DJ? That's a good question. No, never really. It's such a gradual process, and I guess I'm not alone in in uh, in that thinking that when you have the feeling you kind of made it, you already have new plans, already have new ideas where to go to, so you kind of never there, and which is a great thing because you just continuously develop and do stuff. Maybe in the early days, and I played my first bigger gig, I was probably standing there and looking at maybe 1,000 people or something, and thinking to myself like, "Whoa, um, did I make it as a DJ?" But there's so many excuses. You would say like, "Oh, I'm just playing a festival. People are not here for me anyway. So did I make it as a DJ because I'm playing in front of 1,000 people who actually want to see another DJ?" Um, there's a lot of things like this. So I don't really have that moment yet. Maybe it's coming at some point. All right, I'm basically reading the questions the first time, while I'm reading them for the first time, right? So, Robert Brower, sorry if I mispronounced that. Do you notice new emerging markets for techno around the world before Corona? Where is techno coming up and where is it dying, so to speak? Yes and no. South America has always been a growing, amazing market for techno, and it's sometimes got a little slower. Sometimes it's got more. Argentina is was one of the biggest countries for techno, I think, in South America, closely followed by Brazil. India has becoming really much bigger, and so many more people interested in this techno sound. But otherwise, you have parts in the world where it sometimes goes up and sometimes goes down. But the great thing about, I think, techno and and the foundation of that music is that it's there. No matter if a trend goes up or trend goes down, there's always this baseline of people who are really interested in techno. And I do believe that it's been getting bigger worldwide every year, really. Um, Jürgen, again, are you thinking about using Pioneer equipment? Heard it coming for Dubfire and DJs and Beers Talk. Well, I'm playing with it. I'm playing around with it. I've never really used Pioneer equipment, but because of the pandemic, there's so much, let's say, spare time that you can use and try out new things and see how that feels for you and works for you. I'm always on the lookout for new equipment and new stuff, but I would recommend not to switch equipment too quickly, as I do see my equipment or my setup as an instrument that has been building and formed over the years. Um, so I would believe only in little changes. But playing with CDJs, I've never really done this. So I was always interested in learning this, like playing with CDJs, because there's a lot of upsides to this. You can maybe spontaneously walking at a friend's party and just play some tracks without setting up your stuff. So yeah, I'm looking into this and see how that goes, and maybe I play with different ideas. We will find out. Um, Amar T, do you think a new DJ needs to learn CDJs? I'm a tractor DJ, but I'm afraid that people will look down on me because I've never used CDJs. Do you think this is an essential skill for a new DJ? That chimes in perfectly with my last question here. Nobody's ever looked down on me, and I literally have never played in my life with CDs or CDJs. I've never done this. Simple reason, because I came from vinyl, and then the predecessor of Traktor was released, which was in the beginning of the 2000s, 2001 or something like this, and it was called Final Scratch, a company from Holland, which is the technology that is behind Traktor Scratch. meaning you were able to control with a time-coded vinyl the MP3s on your computer. So I switched from vinyl directly to this. I've never used a CDJ. I've never used a Pioneer mixer. And hence why I'm interested in trying it now, because now I have actually the time to do this and play around. So I'm quite happy that I'm able to 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 test that. But to answer your question, I don't really think you need to learn this. If you're invested in one sort of equipment, one sort of software, one sort of way to playing, and you feel this, and it's great. Don't worry about what others are doing. See if this works for you, and just continue to work. And I can assure you, nobody's ever going to look down on you. Like, at least nobody's ever like looked at me and was like, you guys, you don't know how to use a CDJ. Well, you can ask them, do you know how to use my controllers with Traktor? It's different skills. So don't worry about this, and just continue doing what you're doing, and if you're having fun. Um, Next one, Alval, can you recommend to use Archive Force for making more easy to create something? Or what gear? Can somebody tell me what an Archive Force is? I don't know. Can anybody tell me? Does anybody know? Anybody? Maybe in the chat, some of you are in the chat, I believe. You can tell me what an Archive Force is. You have no idea either. You know, I guess it's a controller from the name. Maybe I should Google it quickly. But you know, there's this nice saying, whatever floats your boat. Um, there's so many controllers out there. There's so much different types of equipment, machine MPCs, when it's not only controllers, when it's drum machines with pads or anything like this. You know, just test whatever you like, whatever works for you. Ultimately, they all somehow send signals, so some sound source gets triggered, and the sounds come out of the speakers. And that's the beauty of it. You can basically find yourself whatever you need. So if the Archive Force, whatever that is easy for you to use, go and get it. Eric, Matt Fossum, would you consider the new Machine Plus as a controller? I yeah, yes, of course, it's a great controller. But if you are saying a controller for as a MIDI controller to control other things rather than Machine, I have actually never done this with my old Machinist. Never. I've never used the Machinist as a controller for anything but the actual Machine. And I'm just so used to the Machine, and I love the fact that the Machine Plus is laid out exactly the same way, because as I told you in the beginning, what you're building, if you're building your own setups with whatever that might be, effect machines, drum machines, MIDI controllers like the K2s that are in the masterclass, obviously, you will get used to them as, imagine you built your own guitar, and you get used to this guitar. So it's great that the Machine Plus is basically in the same layout. And yes, I believe in case I play not from a computer, I can use the Machine Plus to just hook it up, and I don't need to use a computer. That's so far my understanding of what the big advantage for me, at least, is as using it as a controller. Nick, would you recommend Machine even for beginners? Yes, I would. Machine is not really just something for super advanced people. It is something that is pretty quickly understood, I find. At least on the surface, you really quickly understand. You have your banks, you have your pads, you can put your samples on there, and you can, with the time, dive deeper in it and deeper and deeper. So if you're looking for, let's say, sort of an all-in-one thing which you can use in your studio, in your home studio setup, or in your DJ setup as additional drums or something like this, the Machine is amazing. I mean, I love it. I've been using it since, I think, the first Machine came out. But if you're looking for more or less an all-in-one solution for your studio, I can also recommend, which I have here, the beautiful MC707, which is a really great. I mean, this is almost a studio in itself, which is pretty awesome. And even that I would recommend for beginners. And That's the cool thing. So do not have any fear of getting a machine if you're a beginner. You will learn it. It's not, yeah, it's not that complicated. Julian Krause, how do you go about structuring your long sets? For example, the marathon one at Berghain a couple of years ago, which I remember very fondly. Um, I don't know which one you're talking about, but I remember all of them, I think. And That's a good question because long sets, you cannot really uh, lay out a plan. Let's say you're going to be playing for 6 or 7 hours. How do you know who's on the dance floor after 5 hours? How do you know what the vibe is after 5 hours? You, the only way to prepare for a set like this is know your music. The more music you know, and you can quickly switch and think like, oh, the atmosphere is like this now. I want to get it to another point like there or there. Then it's always good, obviously, if you know your tracks and you know your music, and then be spontaneous because it is interesting. Little story. I think we do this for 3 hours. Maybe a little story from my very early beginnings as a DJ. Actually, for my very first DJ gig in a club, where I wasn't even playing techno back then. And that time, just slightly, but more or less like music for people, for sort of regular people in the early 90s to dance to. So there was even hip hop involved and stuff like this. And I was nervous before my first gig, and so I made myself a big list of tracks which I could always go fall back to because I was kind of afraid I would black out and I would be standing there like, oh, I don't know what to play anymore. So I could always like pull the list under the turntable and look at it and find some sort of track that I could throw on. And I ended up never using this list from at my first gig. It just was under the turntable and it stayed there forever. So luckily, I never went into a blackout, and it hasn't happened since. Um, and that is mostly because you, I knew the music anyways, and it is also because once you start playing, you're in the moment. You might have that playlist that you put in, which is a good idea. You can always have some backup playlist, like stuff that you throw in a playlist, stuff you can always play playlist kind of thing. If you're just distracted and you just can't find something and you want to play something neutral, always nice to have a playlist like this. I actually don't have a playlist like this. I'm not sure why I'm recommending it, but I think it's a good idea, just to feel safer. And that piece of paper just made me feel safer. But I noticed really quickly that after 1 or 2 hours, none of this would help me because I would be getting into a situation where I needed to play completely other things. So structuring long sets is sort of impossible. You just don't do it. You rely on your knowledge and and reacting to the vibe that's going on. But remind me because I have actually some questions for you guys too later on. um, where are we? Real Gian Piero with the K2 mapping. How do you open the track browser? Can I open my track browser with my mapping? My K2 controllers are currently in a bag. Um, I never really open the track browser because the way I work, I always want to. I never really like change the layout. Obviously, I think I even have that on my computer. If I hit T on my keyboard, I think the tracks come up. Because I have some. If you look at my Traktor preferences, there's also key controls, and you have to find either it's B for browse or T for. I think it's rather a B, but I never really use it because my window where I can search for tracks below my 4 decks is still big enough, so I can easily find whatever I need without opening like a big browser window. An anonymous attendee is asking a question. Vivian, it's not so anonymous. So, going from a couple of gigs a month to few a week when starting out, should an artist focus on music production instead of building a following with his gigs? Um, another old story I can tell you. I think it's a bit of both, you know, these days, because it's rare these days that you're successful without producing your own music, in a way, or making your own edits. They don't necessarily need to be released, but it's a great practice for you to work on music, making edits. Like that's the amazing first step into production. Just like take something existing and just edit it in a different way. If you play those edits, you're already more unique because these edits no one else has. Um, when I started DJing my first techno residency, which was back in Frankfurt in the Omen Club in 1995, I remember the light jockey was standing there, Michael, and he looked at me when I was in there for the first time, and he kind of told me, "He's like, if you want to make it here, you better bring a lot of friends every time you play. You need like bring some people in, so everybody and the management sees that you can actually attract people, and that you're willing to play for the people, and that you're not just like standing there and doing your own thing." So it's a bit of both, you know. You should obviously focus on your music production, and build up the skill. And obviously, also, if you are one of the lucky ones who have a residency somewhere in a local club, just get your friends involved. Like tell them, hey, I'll give you a free beer if you come with your two other friends or something. Like even if it's only two, three people, it's more fun. There's more interaction going on. And John asked, do you set up your gear in advance, or once you arrive to the gig? uh, Best is always in advance, but sometimes it's not possible because you're coming in too late. You took a later flight from the night before, and the club is already open. But usually, it's always best to set up before the club opens. Test your stuff, have everything ready, and then you can like go back to friends or to your hotel and chill out and look for music, and you're safe. You don't have the feeling I go in and I still have to find out where I'm going to set my computer and everything. um, Henry, what do you think about using mixer channel for return effect? Is that better than a mixer return? Both is whatever you prefer. I never really interfere with the EQing of a return signal. For those who don't know what we're talking about, is like you send a signal out to, let's say, a reverb or something, and you can either route this back into your mix, into a proper channel where you have EQs and everything, or you route it back to a return channel where you basically sometimes only have a gain. I never really play around with the EQs, let's say on a reverb. And my only two reverbs, as you know, watching the masterclass, is a delay and a reverb. I control the difference of a delay on the K2 controllers in the mapping. You see that with the machine. But at some point it's too much for me, at least. It's like, wait, my return signal is next to a track running. I sometimes have to be pretty simple. I'm a simple person. So I have my four decks, my four cat channels. Then I have another channel for the machine. So I have these 5 channels on my mixer, which is the Model 1, obviously. So it's 6 channels, or whatever mixer you're using that has more than 4 channels. I have this on these 5 channels, and I know this is separate. This is a separate entity than the return effects. So I'm happy to have the return effects sitting up there on the left side. I don't need to touch them. I don't play around with the EQs. But if you want to play around with the EQs, or play around with this, whatever effect you're using as a send and return effect, obviously, then you might want to put it on a channel mixer, mixer channel, on a proper channel. Lily, there are many genres of techno, but I find myself gravitating more towards minimal techno at the moment. Do you ever have an interest in playing other genres of music in my life, in your life? I before I kind of, let's say, discovered techno, I played everything that I liked, and that had a certain energy, which was essentially any genre really that I liked. But within techno, um, you know, sometimes you go a little slower. Sometimes your life takes you to a little harder music. Sometimes it's a little bit more trancy. Sometimes it's a little bit more stripped down. And that's the beauty of this. You know, you can combine this all. You don't really need to dedicate. You don't really need to tell yourself, "No, I'm dedicating myself to this kind of music." I would recommend play the music that you feel best, because if you are um, excited by what you're doing, I believe very, very strongly that you can only excite others for this, what you do, if you're excited yourself. If you play music that you don't really like because you think it will be more successful, you're not in it fully with your heart. Rather play something that is maybe more niche, but be fully passionate about it, and you will find other people who are passionate about your passion, and then things start to develop. And maybe from that music, I had times where I played really hard. I had times like 6 7 years ago where I was almost calling it new romantic. It was a little bit more trancy. And I enjoyed all these ways, and it's waves. You go through waves, but as a baseline, I think I always have kind of sort of my style. But it's great that you can do other things as well. So, Lily, follow your heart. um, Des, I guess you're from Dublin, right? Des, I saw it in the beginning. Are you doing any more production workshops? Last one was amazing. I'm more producing than DJing for the last 10 years. Yeah, the last production workshop that he's talking about is probably, you can still find it on my YouTube channel, was this two-part production workshop that I did for Beatport last, I think, October or something, or maybe it was September. Each one was 3 hours long, and I basically built a track from scratch with whatever I had around me. It was a lot of fun, and I do believe yeah, I'm happy to do that again at some point. I'm not sure when, but I was pretty busy and finishing a lot of music here right now. That's why I haven't been able to stream as much as I wanted to, because I was really um, involved in finishing a lot of music, and basically doing stuff that I was normally not able to do because of all the traveling. Giampiero Limoli, um, being so experienced with vinyls, what do you think about the new MK7, MK2 could work? I guess you're talking about these. Are these the Pioneer record players that you're talking about? Did Pioneer buy Technics? I didn't follow this. I am probably sure these are great turntables. I don't think that any company like Technics or Pioneer will put anything on the market which is not as good as, at least not as good as any predecessor. Um, so I don't really know. I'm sorry, but I guess it's probably good. Chris, Servus, Alter. Warum hatte ich das Sunset West bisher nie gebucht? Weil ich immer woanders gespielt habe. Eigentlich, weil ich in Frankfurt lange, lange Zeit verheiratet war mit dem U60, davor dem Omen, und danach kurz ein paar Jahre im Cocoon Club quasi als Resident gespielt habe und dann erstmal irgendwie ein bisschen in Frankfurt selber auch für mich untergetaucht bin. Das war irgendwie, hat gereicht in Frankfurt. Aber wer weiß, es ist ja irgendwann vielleicht die Pandemie vorbei, dann bin ich im Tanzhaus. Sorry, that wasn't German because it was a German question. And I'm sure you wanted to hear me talk German at some point too. Henrik, hey Chris, short question. I imported your TSI for the 1K2 in Tractor, but I can't use them. I don't get any signal. I resetted the mappings, reinstalled Tractor. Do you have any other ideas? Yes, you're probably on the wrong MIDI channel. Can you put in these Q&As if that is the right answer for your question? Because my Tractor mapping is, I believe, on the left side on MIDI channel 15 and on the right side on MIDI channel 16. I believe that's what it is. And when you get the K2s, they're like designed by default, I believe, on MIDI channel one. So you have to, once you connect the K2s, before you connect them, before you put the USB in, you hit the setting encoder. You keep pushing it, and then you connect it, and then you get into the settings file. I hope that helps. And then, because the only thing that you don't get a signal of them must be you're sending on the wrong MIDI channel. But let me know if that works. I'll keep monitoring here. Pow. I just started only with a 2-channel controller, Native Instruments S2 MK2, and Tractor. What do you recommend as good next equipment to add new possibilities for creativity based on what we saw on the masterclass, Maschine, FX1, X1, etc.? The question I would have for you is now, are you only playing with 2 channels since you only have a 2-channel controller? Then I totally would recommend to get a 4-channel controller as the next one, to play with 4 decks, because I think before you do anything else, expand the decks, the amount of decks that you're playing with. This is what we've used to do with vinyls. You know, you played with 2 record players in the old days, and at some point you wanted to add something else in, so you put a 3rd record player there, and some crazy people added a 4th record player. Since we have Tractor, 4 decks are easy because you can sync them, as well as with the CDJ that you see there in the corner. I have 4 here now just to test them properly. I used to have 2 of them, and I played around with them. I was like, yeah, all right, but you need, the next step would be 4. So after the 4s, then you might want to play around with effects, meaning get maybe just a simple effects pedal that you can connect a send and return from your controller. I'm not sure if the S2 has a send and return actually, but whatever it is, you might want to first add another deck and another deck until you have 4 decks. I wouldn't mind even 6 decks at some point, but then you add effects, play around with the decks, play around with the effects, and then you can think about adding a machine, just step by step, because if you do it all at once, it's just overwhelming and it's too much. Take your time. Thomas, are there online channels besides Mixcloud you would recommend to get my mixes known, heard? Good questions. You know, I never really know how this works, to be honest, with getting your mixes heard. If you're on SoundCloud, does it really matter on what channel you are on what platform? If it's Mixcloud, SoundCloud, or YouTube or whatever? Obviously, I think SoundCloud is bigger than Mixcloud, maybe. Then again, Mixcloud maybe has other features. I think it's a matter of how you are able to promote your mixes, and not necessarily the platform in itself, which would be a whole different question, which I'm not sure if I could answer that even. POW. What does POW mean? I don't think that means anything, because Theodore Gratsev, I'm sorry if I butcher your name, asks, can you tell me on what part from the equipment do you think is good to spend more money, and on what part it would be okay to use some more cheaper but still manage to keep the main idea of playing? Definitely the cheaper ones, you can definitely work with MIDI controllers. Like you don't need a really expensive MIDI controllers. You know, if you have a really cheap MIDI controller, I went through cheap MIDI controllers in the beginning, and it's just like after 5 weeks in the club, their faders wouldn't work anymore. So you just get a new one. And after a while, obviously the K2s, they are way better built, so you can use them longer. But that's something, you know, that a MIDI controller doesn't really generate any sound. It doesn't really do anything for you. So, you know, it can be cheap. The one thing where I would not really recommend to go super, super cheap would be a sound card, because proper sound cards are not that expensive these days anymore anyways. If you go really, really crazy, obviously you can spend a lot of money, but sound card is kind of your heart of your whole setup and your whole system. So that should be something that is stable and doesn't distort and leaves you enough headroom and enough ins and outs. So that's something that I would spend money on. Um, Otherwise, computers, whatever works, doesn't need to be expensive. I'm People don't believe me, but I'm playing with this 2017 MacBook Air since years now. And before that, I had a MacBook Air from 2014, and I just changed it after 3 years. It was still working, so and it was always powerful enough. So yeah, definitely sound card and save money on if you want to save on fancy MIDI controllers. Tom Serox, is there a big difference for you between the Antelope Orion Gen 3 to the older one? No, there isn't. Like not for me really. The Gen 3 is much bigger. I mean, these are sound cards which are insanely amazing. Like they're so good. And I'm probably taking them on tour. They're not intended for doing this really. And I'm probably only using really 5% of their potential. You could you can connect the whole studio to this thing, and it's just mind blowing, and it blows everything away. So for the purpose I'm using it, there's literally no difference, none at all. Charlie Madea, hi Chris. I know you're a machine lover. I was wondering why you don't use Ableton Push. Because I've always used Machine, and somehow I've never really got my hands on a Push. Maybe that is a great machine too. You can't really, if you spend your time testing and trying out everything, if something works for you, just stick with it. Because I always think it's more important that you have something that you know in and out, and you know how to work it, rather than getting maybe another piece of equipment that might be able to do a little bit more, but which you're maybe not using anyways, and then you have to learn something completely new, and that is actually time you could better invest in just getting your skills in for whatever you're using. So this is why I never switched to Push, because everything I wanted to do um, was possible with a machine. Although maybe my imagination is limited, and there could be a million things that I could do with Push, and I'm missing out. And at the end of my DJ career, at some point, I'm trying the Push, and it tells me like, oh, all these things that I always wanted to do. But hey, that's life, and just that's it. Then there should be yeah, don't spend so much time in trying to think what you could do different. Like, just use the stuff that you have first of all. Will CLR return digital only, or will we see some vinyl releases? And is there a time schedule for season 2 of DJs and Beers, and of course in Alone Together stream? Amir, servus. All right, here's my question. Here's my answers for you, Amir. CLR will only be digital. Ooh. Yeah. Why am I doing this? All right. You guys are the first ones to listen to my little rant I'm doing here. And it's not a rant, but don't get me wrong. I love vinyl. It's great. But to be honest, and I could go really deep in that, and that would be a whole different webinar. It would take like 5 hours. But to be honest, vinyl is a medium from the past. It's not going to take us in the future. Like vinyl, A is environmentally unfriendly. It is, and B, I was really quickly uh, leaving vinyl behind in the early 2000s for Final Scratch, because I always believed that we can make sound so much better than storing it on a vinyl by scratching little grooves into a vinyl record, which has its limitations. I know some of you will say, oh, but it sounds so great and it's such a, yes, but I always felt like if you are relying on an amazing sound of your production once it's on vinyl, then maybe you've done something wrong in the producing or in the mastering process. Like if you want to make it sound like vinyl, just cut off the high end and cut off a little bit the low end, and you kind of have it sounding like vinyl. Of course, that's not really how it works, but there is a certain aesthetic through vinyl. I get that, but you know, it makes the whole process so much more complicated running a label if you also have vinyl. I'm going to be releasing an album this year, and it's going to be also on vinyl because Mute Records, where I'm going to be released the album, does a certain limited vinyl edition because that is a label that has still a lot of people who have turntables at home who want to buy a nice vinyl and they put it on, and that's made for them. I get that. The whole niche thing is completely amazing. But CLR is not really for made for this. CLR should be club tracks, techno tracks, bam, 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 go for it. And I think the digital versions of the tracks will sound better. That's just my opinion. And B, it's just so much quicker. You can be so much quicker releasing stuff. You don't have to deal with vinyl presses and stuff like this, and you're not damaging the environment. There was more in your question. Another Alone Together stream. Yes, soon I will have an update on that. I was literally working on a million other things here while I'm in Switzerland. So that is why. And a season 2 of DJs and Beers, we have not really discussed yet, but we all felt like we kind of needed a break and we needed to see how to develop it. So I can't tell you more on that, but another Alone Together stream will definitely come. And yeah, I don't want to promise too much, but I think it's going to be within the next 2 weeks. And I really love that. I want to say thanks to you guys again. Like I have this community there on my Alone Together streams, and I love it. I just go online on my YouTube channel, and everybody pops up, and everybody's there. It's amazing. Thank you guys. It just helped me a lot over this pandemic. Jay West, do you use the link function in Tractor and Machina and state this always in sync? Yes, I do, and it stays in sync. It's super practical. The link function is a function that Ableton Live basically invented or came up with, and others adopted it. And it's a super tight function. I push the link button on my Machina standalone software, and I push the link button on Tractor, and it just automatically syncs, and it's super tight. Baldizar, do you have a problem in a club with not having enough power outlets? Actually, very good question, but I've never had that because I literally only need 3 plugs, one for my computer, one for the sound card, and one for the mixer, if the mixer is plugged into the same thing. And so a club that has less than 3 power outlets in a DJ booth, I don't think that really exists. And but in order to be sure, I'm always carrying like this multiple power outlet adapter with me with like even I think it's six power outlets if I want to charge my phone or something. So that's it. Chris, how many tracks are you in your current favorite playlist? Slowest and fastest track. My playlists usually, well, they're kind of between 50 and 80 tracks. My playlists. I try not to have too many in them. As you could see on the masterclass, my playlists are separated in like, let's say, more techno stuff, groovy stuff, harder stuff, more bass heavy stuff, deeper stuff. And depending, I mean, obviously I play mostly techno and harder stuff and some groovy stuff. So the techno, the T and the H playlists are the biggest ones, and they're between like, let's say 50, sometimes 100 tracks. But I try to remove tracks as well while I go. Obviously, I still have them on my computer, and I put them in like I maybe copy the playlist and I put them in a history. So if for some reason, which has never happened, like 3 years in the future, I want to go back and see how my techno playlist looked like in 3 years ago. Well, sometimes I actually did this to find out some stuff, to find some stuff that I might have forgotten about that you could play again. Then I looked that up, but I kind of treat it like a record box, these playlists, what I told you in the masterclass too, to not overload them, to not like really scroll around all the time, just to have like, in your record case that you brought with you, you only had like your 70 or 50 vinyls as well. So if you had to put a new vinyl in, you had to take an old one out. And this is kind of like how I treat it. My slowest and fastest tracks, the slowest, it goes down to, I don't know, there's there's drones that have, I don't know, have maybe 80 BPM. I do have tracks that are 147 BPM in one of those playlists, but it's not necessarily that I play them at that point. It's rather that I'm really enjoying these around 130 BPM things at the moment. If you guys followed my last Alone Together stream, I think I was around like 133, 134. I don't really plan that. It kind of like how you feel like, what pushes you in the moment. You play stuff slower, you play stuff faster. Does it still sound good if it's really fast, and so on. So yeah, Ama, which are your five favorite songs? um, five. Any song? I can tell you my like, if somebody asks you like you're gonna go on a deserted island, you can only pick one song that you can take along. That would be Massive Attack's Unfinished Sympathy, which is on their Blue Lines album. It's kind of the track which Massive Attack got famous with, or the second one. And that is for me one of the most beautiful tracks or songs ever made. There is not really four of that follow that. There's a lot of artists that I really admire. If you're on Spotify, find my Burn Slow playlist. That's a lot of music that I really, really love. And there's a playlist which is also public. It's called, it has a lot of numbers, 60, 70, 80, 90, 00, 10. And I put in there like the music I kind of grew up with, the music that I was listening to. There's loads of tracks in there. It's like, if you put this on random, you always have a good time, I think, at least. But if you're talking about techno tracks, dude, they're always changing. I don't really have a favorite techno track. Eric, do you prefer older early techno records which are not as loud as newer ones? How? Do you prepare? Yeah, sometimes, there's some old tracks which, again, vinyl, were released on vinyl in the beginning of the 90s, and they just don't sound that strong. When I switched from vinyl to play digital, I kind of digitalized most of my record collection always. And if I go back these days, let's say, for example, Josh Wink's Meditation Will Manifest, an amazing track, one of my favorite tracks. Um, and I recorded it from vinyl. Maybe I recorded it a bit low too, and I didn't want to find the vinyl, so I had this file, and I put it in Ableton Live. I warp marked it in a way that it's not interfering with the original sound too much, in order to make it syncable. So I don't really need to, like, doesn't really float around, because sometimes, a lot of times, if you record tracks from a turntable, they're not really, they're floating in their BPMs, because the turntable might not really 100% always have the same speed, as well as the cut of the vinyl might not be really in a steady speed. So I did that, and then you try to do like your best mastering skills, pump it up a little bit with a limiter, EQ it a little bit to make it sound a little bit more modern, whatever that is. I even have some edits, like I've done that a lot actually with the old records, to do my own edits. And then I, with the sidechain compressor, I'll just add my own little bass drum underneath it, and then I render it as my modern edit. Let's put it this way. Robert Brouwer again. Does your K2 mapping work also on one K2 controller? Can I edit it? I do not possess two of those yet. By the way, are DJ controllers considered professional in the industry? Yeah, I guess they're considered professional. I would consider them as professional. I use them professionally, so they're professional. And yes, the K2 mapping works also on one K2, because it is literally just twice. It's like one controller runs on channel 15, the other on channel 16, and if you only use two decks, you maybe want to use deck A and B instead of A and C, because on my controllers it's like the left part is A, and then the right part is C, and then on the other side is B and D. But it's really simple to change. This is super, super simple to change, because you only need to change, basically, if you only want to use it on A and B, you will find out it's It's not that simple again, because the controller management and tractor is not that simple. But once you get a head around it, you just basically have to change the MIDI channel of that one, and you can use one controller for just two decks, because the controller basically does exactly the same. If you use one controller or two, it doesn't really matter. An anonymous attendee: how important is the first 15 minutes for you at the nightclub when you play? That is a really good question. The first 15 minutes are probably, let's say the first 30 minutes, probably the most important minutes of your set, in order to get into the mood, to find your footing, um, to kind of realize what's going on in the club, um, to uh, synchronize the brain waves of all the attendees in the club, of the crowd. You know, somebody was playing before you, and he had a vibe going, and you want to get the people essentially invested in you, in your sound. So I always feel like it's about, you know, sort of yeah, synchronizing the frequencies of everyone inside to get everybody on board in a way, by doing something not too complicated. Keep it simple, but already like giving you sort of a direction of where you want to head and where you want to go. You usually should know this, you know, obviously it's different clubs, different places, but if you play a set at Berghain, you probably know you can go a little bit more experimental and wild and hard and whatever. Other than if you're playing an open air beach party in the south of Italy, you might want to have a little bit more of a flowy experience. So yes, the first 15 to 30 minutes are pretty important. Yeah. As well as, because you're mostly distracted. People just want to say hi and behind you, and you want to get a drink, and you know, you still need to get in the mood, you know. So, Jess, I love your sets. Thank you. I have your Mixcloud subscription. Thank you again. Each time you hit me with your live stuff, you add and how you build up the big drops. This is what I want to do, doing live drums and build tension in my sets. Can you give some tips or advice? Um, hmm. I don't necessarily rely on my drum machine, or in that case, on Machine or on effects in order to do this. I more or less rely on the selection of tracks. Uh, you can make a drop, you know, um, even bigger by adding maybe a little bit of reverb, adding a little bit of drums or snare rolls or something like this. But that's kind of the spice, the the seasoning that you're doing. Um, I think ultimately it's about the tracks you play. To build up to a certain track where you know that has a big break, you know. So you're building up to this in a way. It's all about building up to something, and and maybe even building it up longer than expected, just a teeny tiny little bit, so the effect can be bigger. But that's kind of a feeling thing that you develop. It's not a thinking thing. It's not like that I think, oh, in 4 tracks I'm going to be playing this, so now I'm going to do this. It's more like, you know, you feel the vibe of the place, and you feel like, oh, something needs to happen sooner or later, because people are starting to be a little bit like, maybe, I don't know, losing their focus or something on the dance floor, and you want them to be engaged a little bit, so you heighten the tension, but you do this with your track selection. So I would recommend, again, going into the track selection and know your music. uh, Ali asked, how do you go about mixing tracks that are in huge BPM differences? Some techno tracks are as fast as 160 BPM and some are 120. How do I mix these 2 tracks together? You can mix anything together as long as it sounds good. There's tracks, I think Bjarki did a remix for me for my last album of the track Out of This World, which I believe is 147 BPM or something. And I love this remix. I love it. It's just like that. I never really play that fast. Lucky for me, that remix also sounds really amazing played at 133 BPM. Um, And if you don't know the original tempo of the track, you probably would never even really find out. So it is, again, trust your ears. Some music works if you slow it down, some music works if you speed it up, but with others, with some tracks, it gets too dense if you speed them up, and you lose all the dynamics. And with a lot of really fast tracks, because the rhythm is part of the energy. If you slow them down, you will notice it's like, oh, this is really dragging, and it's really, really slow, and it's meant to be played faster. And like, trust your ears, trust the vibe, and that's how we can. There is no golden rule for this. Carl, in your masterclass, when you talk about machine, I can't figure out how to map K2 and control machine effects. Can you explain it to us? Um, that is difficult. I tell you one thing. The thing is, since first of all, your K2s are connected to one computer, right? So whatever you're sending on MIDI signals, you're sending into the computer. Um, they will get to your computer, and whatever software is open and ready to receive MIDI signals will receive them. So you can use one controller to control various different um, softwares on your computer, which I essentially do with the K2 controller, because on the left upper side, I have these two encoders, which I play around with the delay time, for example. Yeah, it's the delay time of the external delay, which is routed via the machine. But obviously, you have to map in the machine the right MIDI, which is then MIDI channel 15 if you use, for example, the left controller, and you go into your machine in MIDI mapping and do it there. And then you can basically play around and you can find out how to control this. The machine MIDI mapping or controller mapping is completely different again than a Traktor one. And Native Instruments really didn't do a great job on those. They're not really intuitive. You gotta get your head around how these controller mappings work. And to be very honest, the first time I had no clue, and I was just lucky enough to be able to call someone at Native Instruments and have it explained to me, and basically do it for me, so I could find out how this can be done. But you can figure it out. You just don't see it as a whole thing. Just see it as like, I'm using this section of my controller, which sends dedicated MIDI messages for the machine, and I'm using the other section for Traktor. And that's how you can do this. Camille, hey Chris, Camille de Vries. Hey Chris, I have a question about the key notation in Traktor. You explained the circle of fifth in your video, but what kind of tooth notes do you use most? With key notes are working good, like C, D, E, F, the lip, F, B, G. With notes should you mix with each other? Um, I have never learned an instrument. That's why I don't really, I can't even read notes. I can't do this. I obviously know where the C key is on a keyboard, but that's where the other, let's say, more simplified systems come in, like the open key notation, which I'm using in Traktor. And the open key notation is also a circle, but it essentially simplifies it, because it relates to certain notes. For example, 12A is, oh, don't get me wrong, I don't have the circle of fifth in my head right now, but is a C, a C major. Kill me if I'm wrong right now, but if you're working with this um, uh, open key notation, it's called, then there are certain rules that you can follow. And I explain them, I think I explained them in the masterclass. For example, if you play a track, let's say a 12A, then you can always add, you can play a 1A, you can play a 2A. A 2A is essentially the scale twice. So meaning, if you add 7 to a 12, you're one note up. If you add another 7 to the 12, then you're two notes up, which 2 added 2 means plus 2, because 12 plus 2 is 14, 7 plus 7 is 14. You can still follow me. And that is why, if you add two, you raise sort of the energy. There is a lot of stuff online you can find, but like I found out for myself that if you're playing, like for example, a 12M or a 1M, that adding three, meaning you play then a 4M, always works really well too. Although you never really see that in the internet anywhere. Maybe it's my ears, I don't know. And that's where your ears come back in. Obviously, if you're a schooled musician and you know all the notes and everything, then you should know what kind of notes harmonize with each other, and what is an energy boost, and what is lessens the energy in your set, which sometimes is a good thing too. You know, it's not that you necessarily have to go up, 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 up all the time. You can go down and then again up it. And but it's again your ears. It's again trust your ears, which I again have a question which I still remember. Um, Chris Ravecade session in April. Yeah. I think we'll. Oh, it's 21st of April. 10 days. Maybe April. Let's say maybe beginning of May. Vasco. Any tips for tedious process of going through 200 tracks on Beatport to finally find one that stands out? Oh my god. No, no. um, maybe yes. Maybe I have some sort of help for you. Um, Go through, like, first find your favorite genres on Beatport. I have to say my favorite genres, and that's probably my go-to genre, is like the techno, raw, hypnotic kind of genre. So I check what's in the charts, I check what's new, and they sometimes have all these like best new releases there, best new releases there. And then I look for the artists that I know. Have they released something new? Is there something new on the label? So this is where you go through this. And I know it's tiring, but it's just part of the job. If you get tired doing this, then maybe it's a good thing to switch back and forth. You don't stay on Beatport all the time. Go into Hardwax. It's a total different interface. It gives you completely different recommendations again. And it's refreshing you. It's like you're looking at something different. It's just like you change the environment and you see something different. Go on TrackSource, look for music there. Go on Bandcamp and follow your favorite labels and see what they're having. That's a really good way to find stuff. Another good way to find stuff, which I rarely use somehow. I don't know, maybe because I rather want to look for my own stuff. But what you could try and do is listen to sets of DJs that you like, check the track listings of these sets if they are available. Um, my AM FM show always has the track listings. And then you find maybe tracks that you really like. And while you're doing this, you might find an artist that you've never heard about. And then you check the artist on whatever platform you're buying your tracks. And um, and you find a whole another new track that I don't have. So this is the way to find music. Uh, the most key thing, don't stress out. It's like it's tiring to listen to music, and if you start having the feeling you're missing out all the time, you're stressing yourself out because you think like, oh, I'm missing out, I'm missing out, I'm missing out. Believe, somehow it maybe sounds funny, but believe in the universe. Like, the music that you want to play will get to you as long as you're open for it. It's just like it'll get to you if you invest time and you're dedicated in finding new music. You will find the good music. Don't worry about those tracks that you might be able to play and they would be amazing, but you don't find them because you weren't looking right. you know when it's just another track. You If it's really really good and really important, it'll come back in to your life. So don't worry about this. Charlie Madea asked me about the Machine Lover and why I don't use Ableton Push. I already answered that because I've just got stuck with Machine and never really tried Ableton Push. Assume user, hey Chris, that that you know is a difficult situation right now because there's no clubs or festival open almost in the whole world. So do you think you can create a stream page live for all of us? You can share our videos or streams with you and all people that you know. Oh, I think what you're talking about is a whole new business structure to build something up, so everybody can share stuff. The closest to what you're looking for is maybe um, the the comment section of my streams where everybody gets together and exchanges ideas and stuff like this. But I don't think I can help you with that. I'm sorry. Jole la Nap Nappe. As Laurent Garnier said one day in an interview, he hopes that the new generation will listen to something else than techno and that the music will continue to renew itself. Indeed, now that techno has become so commercial, how could you reinvent itself? How could it reinvent itself to keep the integrity of its original culture of openness and sharing? I think Laurent Garnier has a really good point because there might be some young folks out there who grew up with techno and never listened to anything else. I just love music, so I listen to loads of music, and I think subconsciously that influences me in my production work and also maybe in my DJ work. So that is a good thing, and I agree with Laurent that if you only listen to techno in your life, maybe just put on some other playlists and listen to some other music. Listen to some. I lately put on some 50s and 60s playlists on Spotify, which I found amazing. There's so many great ideas that these guys had back in these days already. Pretty crazy stuff. And that maybe inspires you to put it into techno, and by that you reinvent this and you fine tune it in the way that you want it, and that's very important. But I don't really, the great thing about techno is no matter how commercial a certain um, aspect of techno gets, there's always this baseline of really deep underground raw techno that's there. It's consisting of crazy sounds, kick drums, um, hi-hats, claps, and it's pretty raw. And there's always people doing this, and this will never become a commercial. That there is no way, because it's not made for everyone. So when you say that techno becomes commercial, I would almost argue then it's not techno anymore. So I really strongly believe that techno is pretty safe of being completely sold out, and has always been. I mean, obviously, look back in the early 90s in Germany when we had Marusha with Somewhere Over the Rainbow, or Mark O, and all these acts, But when there's really like all these super successful tracks that ended up in the charts, obviously they had techno roots, they had a hard kick drum or whatever, but they were not really like techno tracks, right? So I don't, I'm not afraid of techno becoming so commercial that it loses its roots. I don't think so. Um, Boldiza, what kind of music do you listen to for inspiration? Do you listen to other DJs in your free time? Uh, no, I just said that. It's like I um I don't really listen. I should listen more to other DJs maybe. Um, I rather use the time to find new music myself. The times I've listened to other DJs, I did get inspired and I've found new ways. I'm not sure why I'm not doing this more often, because of probably a lack of time, and you only can consume so much music on a professional way. So you have to chill out at some point and listen to something else. So if I listen to, like, let's say a 2 hour set of some other DJ, that maybe steals me 2 hours of searching music from my own. Maybe it's my brain that does have a lack of capacity doing these things. But uh, so it's not so much that I listen to other DJs, but as I just told you, is I just listen to like 60s and 50s playlists on Spotify, and I heard so much stuff that kind of like, whoa, this is cool. Like he used some sort of bass really weirdly in a distorted way. Maybe I should try that with my 303 and then do something else. Um, I yeah, I get stuck listening to the music that I know. I think everybody does, the music that you grew up with, um, and uh, obviously the music that comes out new that you really enjoy. And again, I can just point to the playlists that I have on my Spotify channel, like the Burn Slow, and there's a number of playlists which kind of like is a more commercial playlist. um, and yeah, it's just yeah, I find that inspiring too. Amir, you again. Um, every time has its musical technology. We've seen vinyl, CD, and MP3. What do you think we'll see in 10, 20 years, and what might DJing look like? I mean, everybody's pushing the streaming right now, but I have a point there, and maybe one of you can uh, sorry, I have two windows open, the Q&A and the chat, and I've just realized that my K2s are mapped on channel 1 and 2, not on 15 and 16. Hold on, I take everything back. Insert 1 and 2 and wherever I said 15 and 16. Maybe it's the other way around. It's been a while since I opened the mappings of my tractor, and maybe it's the other way around that these K2s are delivered with 15 and 16 as their default channels. It's one of these two ways. I'm just reading this in the chat. But going back to the technology, everybody's pushing the streaming thing. But I have a question for you guys now out there. Um, uh, which you can or cannot answer. I don't know. Everybody was complaining about MP3s when they became popular. Like, oh, you have to play wave tracks because the MP3s are missing so much information, which will just the missing information will be amplified in a big sound system, and it will sound so much worse. Myth number one: a 320k bit MP3 and a 16-bit wave file, 40.1 kilohertz, has literally no audible difference. Like you can, like I can do blind tests with any of you. With the music that we are making, at least, maybe in classical music, you some super trained ear person can hear the difference. And not even it doesn't get amplified in a truck in a club. Sometimes even if you have less information, the club sound system has to deal with less information and therefore brings out the track even more powerful. So the other way around even. Um, so a 320k bit MP3 is for me really the same as a 44 kilohertz 16-bit wave track. I know some of you disagree. I'm fine with that, but I've done tests with myself, blind tests. I think I have a good sound system um, where I can judge this, and I never heard a difference. But now it comes streaming music, as you all know, because the streaming technology will um, like raise the volume of your track again, or it's the technology behind that is um, what Spotify, for example, uses is it made in a way that if you put a track out there which has CD quality and it's really loud mastered, it will get squashed on a streaming platform. So that is a question I would really love to discuss with Beatport. The tracks that they will stream in the world, what what quality do these tracks have? What is the loudness level on these tracks? Will the dynamics get squashed because all the techno producers, including myself, um, obviously don't want to squash our tracks, but that we want to sound them as loud as possible. So the dynamic range is maybe in techno way smaller than in any other kinds of music. But if you throw a track like this that you've mastered and produced like this on a streaming platform, I I don't see that sounding great. So I think there's still work to do. So um, I'm maybe old school, but I'm sticking to my MP3s, not even the vinyl. Nick, being an absolute beginner, welcome. Aren't we all some in different places? I currently own just a two-channel controller with my tractor, totally overwhelmed with the amount of options and available hardware. From your point of view, what would be good next addition to this beginner setup? As I said before, get used to two-channel controller and get used to mix two tracks with each other. If you're feeling super comfortable mixing two tracks with each other, and you can do really nice, flawless mixes with it, add the third deck and see what you can add to whatever's running that you feel makes sense and could make the people on the dance floor happier. And if you've done that, add a fourth channel, add a fourth deck. Um, because you can play stripped down groovy stuff, which adds to the groove maybe of a track that runs on another channel, and you're only using the bass of another channel. Play around with those things, because this will also help you to understand how frequencies work with each other, and if and you learn if you're stacking too much stuff on top of each other, if you have too many frequencies going on, and everything is not working. So the next step would be like go up to 3 or even 4 channels, and then if you feel super comfortable doing this, then maybe add some effects, as I mentioned earlier, or add a little drum machine. But I would start with effects. Chris, was bedeuten die farblichen Cover in deinen Playlists? Oh, that's a good question. I actually didn't I he's asking what the colored covers that I'm using um, do in my in my tracks. I sometimes because I'm not really interested in the cover art, I have built my own little colored squares in a sense, and like JPEGs. It's just literally JPEGs, a red one, a blue one. So for example, a red JPEG, if I listen to a track and I put it in my techno playlist, for example, in the T, and the track is a pretty straightforward techno track with not much weird stuff going on, I probably would put a red square to it and change the cover artwork with this red square. Because then I see if I have a red square and I don't remember the name of the track really, and I think like, what is this? I do know this is a pretty straight techno track. If I put a techno track in my playlist, for example, and it's blue, then I know it's a little bit more deeper, on the deeper end of of the techno playlist. So if I look at my playlists, I have the techno playlist, and then obviously I have deeper tracks in there, harder tracks in there, more straight tracks. Red goes for more straight. Green goes a little bit for almost a little bit on the commercial edge with maybe a big break and a vocal going up. Yellow is a little bit more groovy. Orange is a little bit more bass heavy. Black is more industrial. Kind of dark gray is rough and raw. Um, what other colors do I have there? Yellow. Yellow is groovy. I think I've mentioned that. Blue is deep, and the light blue is mostly an a cappella or a tool or something like this. Now you got all the. Didn't I mention that in my masterclass? Damn. Eric, do you tune sample percussions during a set in headphone or beforehand? Um, yes, I do tune sometimes percussions because, but not on my headphones. Once I'm pretty spontaneous with my percussions that I throw in on the machine. And if you guys have the machine, you obviously load it up, I guess, my sounds on the machine, and you see there's already different tunes and there are different sounds, but not every snare works with the track that you're playing. So I'll mix the snare in maybe, and then I noticed while I'm listening to it full on the sound system, who that maybe should sound a little different. And I do this live in a way on air, so people can even hear that the tune of the snare of the ride goes up and down, and I don't mind that. It's just this is kind of like life. This is like it brings things to life, you know. And while I'm tuning it, I'm finding the moment where I feel right, and then I leave it like this. And the next time I play it, maybe it's in the wrong tune again, and I like don't be afraid to do this while it's running, as long as it's not too obvious and it just throws off people totally. Then you can do it. But here's my question for you guys, because that's something that I maybe have not really went into in my masterclass. So, oh, damn it, there's so much in the chat. I'm sorry. We'll get to the chat in a little bit. I'll stick to the Q&A, but I have that question for you guys, or maybe that not only a question, maybe something that I've not really got into with the masterclass. When you guys play another track, do you really like you choose a track that you want to play? I found myself in the last years that I don't really even listen to this track before I mix it in. I kind of know the track that I'm going to mix in because I kind of know it, but obviously you cannot completely know it because that would be massive if you know all these tracks. So how I approach it is like I'm mixing it in, and whatever happens with the track, if some sounds come in that kind of interferes with the sound of another track, then I try to EQ it out. And my question would be like, do you guys actually work like this, that you really listen to the track on your headphones first, and you can actually judge from your headphone sound that it will fit tune wise and structure wise, groove wise, with the track that's running on the system out there? Because I've never done this. I've realized I've never really done this. The only reason why I've used headphones basically is just to pre-listen, obviously, to is this the track that you actually want to play, because you forgot the name. That's a quick listen, but I don't analyze the groove. I don't analyze, it's just like, it's not like that I listen to it on my headphones and I can already judge that the tune is going to be good or bad. Um, that is more like I know this, I know this because I know the music. But I would rather, and that's what I do, I'd rather mix the track in and I find out it just doesn't work at all. And I try to mix it out so nobody noticed that I just totally fucked up. Um, Rather than like trying to figure out if it works and then just throwing it in, because I couldn't judge my that well my headphones in a live environment. So I'll do it intuitively, and and if it doesn't work, you just try to get it out and nobody noticed what you've just done. So I was wondering if you guys do this. No, I adjust it while mixing it in. That's what you're saying. No, use the key, especially with Serato. But you cannot always trust the key either. So even there, I'm kind of cautious. I mean, sometimes you just take the bass out and you just hammer the new track in, and then you realize the kick is in a complete different tune and a different, totally different sound, and it doesn't work at all. These are moments that you want to avoid, obviously. But I see what you're saying here. Sometimes you use headphones. Yeah, the streaming platforms will adjust your music to meet their loudness standards, and that's the issue. That's the problem, because that kills the dynamics of the tracks, and that is way worse than any issues that anyone ever had with MP3s. Like, now there's a time to basically start to complain about music quality if we're going to streaming for clubs. And that's what I want to find out more about, those people who do these streaming into clubs, like Beatport link and whatever it's called. Like, is the music quality as good as if you had the music as MP3s or WAV files on your computer? I am not too sure about this. Headphones. I prepare tracks and mark it where the best point is to go in. Okay, going. I'll go back to Q&A question a little bit. It's good that Amar said that just now. Um, you know, preparing your tracks, preparing your playlist is a good thing, but you should always leave space for spontaneous stuff. I never really, as you saw in the masterclass, I never really use cue points. A lot of people use cue points, and I'm sure it's a great thing. Maybe it's because I'm lazy sometimes, and it's just too much music to put cue points on, and I would forget what the cue points is for. So I'm trying to do this very intuitively. Uh, uh, Hold on. I was meant to record this session here, and I think the camera turned off. I'm sorry. Are we still recording here? Pairing your file. I'm sorry. I was meant to record with a different camera. I'll still record with this one, but for some reason, this camera is now again recording. It shut off at some point. Sorry. Anyways, coming back to this, preparing is great, but don't over prepare, because over preparing would put you in a box, and you're just like uh, playing exactly what you've prepared, which will eliminate any moments that just come out of this moment, anything that you didn't think about. You want to have stuff happen you didn't even think about. I think one of my favorite moments DJing is when I suddenly look down at my equipment and I'm like, what the hell is going on? Like, this sounds fantastic right now. and you would never be able to prepare something like this, because it's just like the moment that you feel it, you just push this track in, you play this kick drum, and you have this effect going on, and you're like, whoa, wait a minute. So if you have prepared too much, you might miss out on those moments. That's just um, my Tom Xerox, hello. Hast du noch Kontakt zu Andre Walter? He is asking if I'm still in touch with Andre Walter. Andre Walter is an old friend of mine, and yes, I'm not in constant contact, but I could call him right now if I wanted to, and I maybe should, because I haven't spoken to him in quite a while, and I haven't seen him in a year now. Andre Walter is basically, let's say, the head of Stigmata. Stigmata was his idea, and when we did the first 10 Stigmata records, we did them together, but that was his concept, his idea, and his whole thing. And he has a Stigmata life act. I very much recommend you guys to look that up. Taylor River, Chris, do you open and put some deoxit on the machine encoders when they get jumpy, or send it to repair? This is a common issue with encoders on synths, etc. Also hoping for more production material. Cheers back to Finland. Man, like club environments with the fog machines, with drinks being spilled, with smoke and ashes is not a good environment for faders in general. So I don't really use any products like contact spray, or what are you calling, deoxit, which probably removes rust, I guess. I don't use this, but honestly, I have to say I have the luxury that if a machine breaks, I just call Native Instruments and they give me a new one. And they have been doing this uh, for the past 15 years now, I guess. Um, and things break after a while. That's just what happens. I mean, you can take care of your equipment as good as possible, obviously, and I do. But at some point, K2 controllers, the faders don't work. You can take it apart, look at it, get the dirt out. I guess that works, but I don't have any handy tips there. And more production material? What exactly do you mean? Chris, danke zurück. From Arabia, I think. Do you only play music that makes you emotional or that you deeply like? I tend to not play any tracks or buy any unless it makes me feel something deep. Do you feel what I say? Of course, I feel what I say, and that kind of is the same what I said earlier. If you're not excited by what you're doing, I think it's really hard to get the people excited of what you're doing. So I'm only excited what I'm doing if I play music that I'm excited about. So I need to feel the music. I need to see the point of the music. I think it's a great skill if you're a DJ and you can play any kind of music and make a crowd dance, and you're kind of like disconnect yourself from the music you're playing, and you're just basically doing a service. But that's never how I saw DJing. DJing for me, first of all, was basically playing music to other people that I really loved, that I really wanted to convince them to listen to, because this is really, really good. And this is what started in early ages already. Like when I was 11 or 12 years old, I was already running to friends and was like, do you hear that song? Isn't that great? Or I always annoyed other people to listen to this music. And obviously, I think that was the first path to become a DJ, because yeah, you just want to share the music with your passion. So yes, you should only play music that emotionally affects you. I agree. And I couldn't even do it any other way. If I had to play a shitty track that I don't believe in, I probably would hide behind the DJ booth. Henrik, danke für deinen Tipp bei der Zone K2 mit dem MIDI-Channel. Werde ich testen. Yeah, but with the MIDI channel test, please, Henrik, understand that I was talking about 15, 16, it's 1 and 2. Thanks for clearing that up. 7-inch, hi Chris. Kann man dir unreleased Track schicken für ein Feedback? Can you send me tracks for feedback? Honestly, sadly not, because that would take so much time away from my own production and from my own finding tracks, that I would love to. Maybe one day I'll I don't know, I dedicated one day a week to just giving feedback to tracks, which would be great. I know, I understand totally where you're coming from. It is so helpful if somebody who you believe has a little bit more knowledge about something tells you if you're on the right path or not. But it's literally like a time issue. I'm really sorry about that. Francesco Di Carlo is saying, do you practice redundancy for live gigs? Do you take with you a backup computer in case of issues, crashes, cables, a double antelope sound card, etc. Things. I always call this the redundancy. I always call it the exit strategy. You should always have an exit strategy, as anything can fail all the time. Obviously, for those people who play on CDJs and they're set up by the club, you can rely on them, obviously, if they work, but if they fail, it's not really your fault. You can stay there like, club, you didn't do your job. I mean, people are going to be mad at you because it's not working. But if you're playing with controllers and computers and the music stops, it's your own fault. And people will be mad at you for a good reason. And you should know this. So have an exit strategy. I used to have an exit strategy, as I maybe you weren't here at the beginning, that I was traveling with basically two computers, two RME sound cards, separate ones, totally not connected setups. They were basically only connected through sound through the mixer. So I was always safe. If one computer would be crashing, I just could continue to play. I was using both of them, and yeah, in the early days there were play days where or gigs where the computer could completely crash, and I would continue to play on the other one with Ableton and do some live bits while I was trying to get the other one back to work and finding out the issue. And it's not ideal. You want to People come to the club to have a good night, and they don't want to see you fiddling around with cables and trying to find the mistake. So have an exit strategy, and if it's only, and that is probably also a reason why I'm playing around with the CDJs. If it's only a CDJ that you put next to your setup, and you have it ready to go with a USB stick in there, in case something crashes, and you just can hit play and just the music continues. That is your that is your task. That is your job. Music should come out of the speakers so people can have a good time. That's why you're there. That's like the priority, and that is what you have to be prepared for, that this happens. So I have, I mean, I'm not following my own rule. In the past 2 3 years, I literally had no backup. No backup. I was playing with my computer with my Antelope sound card, with Tractor and Machine running from one computer with my controllers. But I have over the years managed to put this setup together in such a cool way that it literally never failed on me. There was no way this would, and it never has. It hasn't happened. It hasn't happened yet. But it's because it hasn't happened for over all those years, it doesn't mean that it can continue like this. So this is why I'm probably also going to start to have like a CDJ maybe next to me, because I don't want to carry an additional computer to the club now. Um, it's already too much what you carry around anyway. So find good exit strategies. A good exit strategy is always a good thing to have. Eric, all the little LEDs on your machine are red. Is there a reason for you don't use any color coding? Yeah, it looks better. All these colors just make it too. I find it's just an aesthetic thing, to be honest. I don't really need other colors. I know the banks inside out. Um, and I do like happy accidents. I want to play a clap, but I'm on the wrong bank, and it's hi-hats. And maybe that sounds great too. It's like be open for spontaneous things to happen, and improvising. And I literally keep it all in red because it looks better. That's the only reason. Which sound card do you recommend with a small budget of plus minus 500 euros? Probably a Native Instrument sound card. They have really amazing stuff. I mean, even the Audio 2. Oh, talking about exit strategies, I actually carry an Audio 2, which is the 2-channel sound card, which it's super simple. And I think, I'm not even sure how much it is. Maybe 100 euros or even less, maybe more. Correct me if I'm wrong. But uh, but having that in your bag, like in case something happens, you can quickly grab it out and connect it to your computer, and you can at least play with 2 decks. So Native Instruments does really, really good sound cards. I would recommend uh, for that kind of money. An Audio 8 or Audio 10, I'm not even sure where they are. Does a Xone 90, Henry, does a Xone 96 could be a good compromise instead of a Model 1 mixer? Yes, absolutely. Zone mixers are really amazing mixers in general. I haven't really played much with the 96, but it is a pretty insanely amazing mixer. I play with the Model 1 because I really like the setup of the filters instead of the EQs on each channel. I mean, um, when Richie back then developed the mixer, he got a lot of DJs in, including myself, to help him develop that mixer. So I was part of developing that mixer in a way. So it's just like it's a great flow. But the zone mixers are basically designed also by the same person, Andy Rigby Jones, who used to work for Allen and Heath, and he designed all the zone mixers, and he also designed the Model 1 mixer. Andy is a genius in the mixer world. So you can't go wrong with the zone mixers. Paul, no, Des Cahill. Oh, we're back in Dublin, I think. Des, I would like to know the approach to pitched patterns in relation to techno. Melodies, single or 2 or 3 note patterns. Oh, you mean melodies? Dude, anything is possible as long as it sounds good. My next single release, which is the first um, single of the album, which I'm going to be releasing, is going to come out, I think, 22nd of May. So in 1 month. And dude, it's proper melody. It's actually a song, but I did a club mix which has this bass line in in yeah, different pitch. Obviously, it's a melody. It's a chord structure. Uh, but I think I did it in a way that it works really well in the club. So look out for that one. Anything goes if you like it. Robert Brower, are DJ controllers considered? Well, we had that already. If DJs controllers are considered professional. And again, I say yes. Do you own 2 Model 1 mixers for touring and at home? Yes, I do. Yeah, actually, I know. I have 3 because one is in Frankfurt. In my, I'm in Switzerland right now. One is in Frankfurt in my streaming room too as well. Here's one, and one is in the bag. But because I've been working with this mixer from beginning, you know, I think I even have mixer um, with the number 02. What do you call this number? The production number. 7-inch. What do you use for sync the whole data between 2 Macs, and what OS are you using? Big Sur is a good choice for now. No, 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 no. Don't. I never I never upgrade to the latest stuff. Like I've learned that, like, don't upgrade to the latest stuff when especially when it comes to music production software or your Traktor stuff. Always wait first until other you know the advantage you have to upgrade to something will definitely not as big be as big that you should run the risk that nothing is working again. I'm running in Catalina, which is 10.15. Um, I think on my laptop and on my desktop here. I have my desktop here in front of me, as you can see, smiling on camera there, and this camera is still running. And I would not, even on my desktop, upgrade to Big Sur because so many plugin companies are still not compatible and don't do that. I do not. If I played with 2 computers, then we're not synced with each other. I tried that at some point to have a MIDI signal, but it's stupid. Also, with my collab sets where I play with Speedy J or played with Speedy J, we never synced our setups with some sort of MIDI or link function. We just played it by ear. We sync. We just are on the same tempo, and if we want to change the tempo, we're basically talking to each other, like raise the tempo of one, and I'm going to mix in new. Camille de Vries, I was wondering if you also use machine snapshots for some of your effects in your sets. What do you mean exactly by snapshots? Because I do use machine effects on the machine itself, obviously, like the ribbon controller and the performance FX that you have on there. Luckily, I have a machine right here, like that ribbon controller here. You can assign it to different effects. and this is what I use a lot. Right, note, repeat, play something, and then with my thumb, I'm on the ribbon controller. Is that snapshots? What are you talking about? I'm not entirely sure what you mean by snapshots. Um, Zoom user is asking, how can I set up my Roland TB03 with my Machine MK3 for sync at the same tempo? The TB03 should have a MIDI in, and the machine has a MIDI out. So you should be able to send a sync signal to your TB03. I have never owned a TB03. I have the original TB303, which I have here. And actually, this one is um, the Devilfish customized, and the sync in is actually a median. So I have a median for this machine, um, and this is why I'm able to use it in some of my live sets on the Alone Together streams. I sometimes use the 303 because I just put the MIDI out of the machine. You go into the machine software and you have to basically just go into MIDI settings and say send sync, and then it sends sync. You don't even need to worry about MIDI channels or anything like that. It sends a sync to your to whatever machine you're using that has a MIDI in it. I do believe the TB03 should have a MIDI in, right? Zoom user, maybe you can let me know if that was. Um, there's a lot of Q and A's on my Q and A window here, but let me quickly go into my chat because there's another question that I see. Is it worth the money to switch to a Model 1 for home use? I really like to get my hands on one, but I'm afraid. Really like the filter, low pass, high pass on every channel. Why is this no standard? Because it's a niche mixer in a way. Uh, but you know, it depends on how much money you have spare. The Model One is quite a luxury thing. It's quite an expensive mixer. Um, so if you have enough money, obviously it's worth getting it because it's an amazing machine to play around with. But if you want to save some money, it's just, you know, it's not really necessary to have a Model 1 at home. Any mixer will do. It's going to have filters, they have stuff to play around, and you will find out what is good for you or what is not. We're going back to my Q&A. 7-inch, is there a chance of release a newcomer on CLR? Yes, there is. Um, so let me quickly tell you about something about CLR. I'm just literally mastering my own first release again, which is going to be CLR 92, which will be solely released on Bandcamp. And I'm going to speak to Aulart, and I'm going to try to get all your guys' contact, or maybe give that mastered package to all of you because you're so nice and bought the masterclass. I'm going to do that. So this is a 3-track EP that I've done, which is the relaunch of CLR, which is only going to be on Bandcamp for now. My release, at least, will be, because I have simultaneously a whole album with 4 singles coming up from May on, and I don't want to interfere with this by having a techno release on Beatport here and then something there. So it's only going to be for the lovers on Beatport, and I'm going to try and get all the information, and the Aulart people can send it to you. But the second release, number 93, then that will be officially everywhere on Beatport, is by an artist called Frankie Bromley. And Frankie, I met when I did promo tour for the Burn Slow album. Back then he was 17 years old, and he asked super interesting questions. It was back in Manchester where I did like an in-store appearance. And Frankie was like standing out because he asked like really cool questions. So he got in touch via, I think, Instagram, and sent me music over the past 2-3 years, and his style has developed and is amazing. And I chose 4 tracks of his demo to release on CLR. So if there's great music, I don't really care if you're known or you're super famous. I'll release it. Des, you again in Dublin. Any ideas for finding a good company booking agents? I'm still trying to figure out how to switch from production to live, and your masterclass has given me loads of ideas that I would never have thought of. Thank you. That is the point of the masterclass, I think, and I'm happy that it works in your case. Now, I literally have no idea how to find booking agents. Like, it's not like that you can just go on the internet and find a booking agency. You know, uh, it's you you got to, you're producing mostly. So while you're producing, you're getting in touch with labels, right? Or with friends who maybe already have a release. So these friends know a label, and you get to know the people on the label. Then these people on the label, if you're getting along with them, probably know a friendly company that is a booking company. And that's how you get to go into the scene, like slowly, by getting to know more and more people. It's not like that you can go online and say like, I need a booking agency, and then something pops up and you send a message. The booking agency will never really like reply to that, because a booking agency, there needs to be some sort of like connection beforehand. Somebody needs to know someone who can introduce you to something. So this is why it's always good if you're producing to be out there. I mean, obviously not right now, but maybe in clubs, and hand your production maybe to the DJ who's playing. He might not listen to it, but it's a beginning, and send your stuff to someone who maybe releases something somewhere already and has a connection to that label, and you can ask this person to give it to the label, so the label is more inclined to listen to it because it comes from an artist that already is on that label. This is kind of how you go step by step by step, and it's a long journey. I tell you, it's incredibly long, and sometimes you're frustrated because you don't feel like anything is happening, because it literally, in the music that we are doing, techno. The great thing is, if somebody asks me what's your biggest success in your life, in your career, is a simple answer. It's because I'm still doing it after all these years, because you can even don't do much for some years now in where I am, but because you know you're known for a certain thing for so many years, people will still believe in you somehow. And this is the great thing about techno. You can, with other genres which are a little bit more commercial, you maybe have one bad EP and you're gone, and you'll be replaced by someone else. But that is the good side. But the negative side is it takes long to get there. But if you're really passionate about it, and if you really feel like this is my thing, then still believe in it, and don't get thrown off if, like, for years and years nobody wants to listen to your productions. Like, at some point maybe you'll run into the right person, and then it builds up step by step. So I hope that helps you. Hey Chris, a Zoom user that is a difficult situation right now because of no clubs. Wait, we had this already. We had this already. Streams. We are we are at TS 608. What do you think of the development of native instruments? As you've been quite an early and long-term Traktor user endorser, and Traktor is pretty much the center of your setup. Would you like to see a bigger step forward, an advancement of Traktor in the future? If so, what would you like to see? This is a very good question. I know that Native Instruments is working on the next step. And I'm sure it's going to be an overhaul of Traktor and making it even more user-friendly, and making it, I don't know, in various ways, more powerful. But honestly, it's just like reinventing a turntable or reinventing a CDJ. You can add a little bit of this, add a little bit of this. In the end, it's a player. And I'm just happy if the software runs super smooth, and it's what you make out of it. It's not like that I rely on them to give me a new update with some new fancy features. Essentially, I want to have a software that runs solid and does what I want it to do, and the rest is up to me by choosing the right music to play, adding the right effects, and whatever percussions or instruments you want to add. So I don't see really super next major steps in that development. I think we have these different ways of playing now: CDJs, um, computer-based software, Serato, Traktor, whatever you feel good with, whatever you're familiar with. I don't. If there's Traktor users who say like, oh, I'm waiting for the next update because I want to have all that stuff. Like, yeah, what are you exactly waiting for? What should it do for you? I maybe again my imagination is limited, but I don't really see so much stuff. They have tried a lot, you know, they have tried to come up with these stem decks and the sample decks and all that stuff, which is fun. It was never really for me, um, but maybe some other people found this great and still play with this. But I think the core thing is just you need a player that plays music, and the rest is up to you. What's your BPM average? Henry says. Depends on the gig. It depends on on the vibe, but I would say it's around 129 right now, average. 129. Amir, you again. Um, are your skiing skills good enough for a second career as an adventurous skiing influencer? Sorry. PS mit Method Attack habe ich angefangen aufzulegen. Very good. Massive Attack is always good. My skiing skills are actually I proper. If you follow me on Instagram, sometimes you could maybe see it. But I'm not sure if I ever want to, if I would be ever good enough to influence anyone with this or make money. Charlie Madea says, "Hi Chris, what do you truly think about the Model One?" That's a really good question. What I truly think about it, because that kind of underlies the message that I would maybe sometimes say something that I'm not truly believing in, and that's wrong. If I was truly thinking that the Model 1 is a crappy mixer, I wouldn't be using it. If I was truly thinking something different than I'm actually openly saying to you, then why would I do this? Like it's then I wouldn't use it myself. I always believed in like the equipment that is good, I'm gonna try and tell everybody about it. If equipment is crap, and even if I get it for free, I don't know, I'm not gonna sell it to you as a great piece of equipment, even if I got it for free and the company wants me to promote it. I just don't want to do this because it would be an asshole move, right? And I'm not doing this. So what I truly think about the Model One is it has it's the company is called Play Differently for a reason. It has completely changed the way I play. Since I use this mixer, I mix in a completely different way because it has the filters instead of the EQs, and it just worked for me incredibly well. Doesn't mean that I don't go back on a different mixer or play with EQ mixers or something like this. I probably will at some point because it's always fun to switch some stuff around. But I think the Model 1 has been a groundbreaking, insanely amazing mixer. 7-inch, do you plan a Patreon site with kind of producer help? That would be great. Is Mixcloud your favorite support subscription? Yes, it is, because I find Mixcloud extremely usable. I find their system is amazing. For example, if I can quickly explain that, I have a Mixcloud Select page where you can subscribe for €4 a month. An amazing thing about this, I mean, €4 a month for what you're getting, and I'm not talking only about myself. There's Carl Cox on there, Adam Bayer, and John Dickweed, and all these people, and all have different subscribed models. Mine is €3.99, and every mix that I deliver there, and there's 2 or 3 mixes a week at least, new mixes. My AM FM shows are there 2 weeks earlier without me talking. You can download it on your phone. Not only you have that, but the biggest thing about this is, and I hope this will be on more platforms and it will be the future, is that their software is analyzing the music. And it's incredible how it works. It's like you have a track listing, you put a mix in and you have a track listing within like 10 seconds somehow, like bam. So once you have a track listing, they have contracts with all the labels and with all the artists that are on their labels, obviously, or directly. And the money that you're paying gets divided by all the music that all artists are involved directly. Like it's like if I play a track of records, you a certain amount of money compared to like everything goes to records. That's Radio Slave's label, by the way. And isn't that amazing? And Radio Slave then can pay that money out to to the artist. You might think this is only a little amount of money, but if a lot of people would use this, people would again start to make money with music. and we haven't made money with music for a long, long, long time. I would almost argue I've never really made money with music, because back in the days in the late 90s when I, or in the early 2000s, 2003, when I released my first album, Evolution, it sold really, really, really well. It sold incredibly well. But half a year later, the distribution went bankrupt and I never got paid. So nobody should come to tell and bitch about Spotify with me. I at least get some sense there. Um, Back in these days, so many people made money, but the artist was the last one to get money, and you got fucked over here and there. So these are good examples that the old times were not necessarily better. We just need to find solutions that in our digital world, NFTs are a new great thing in this way to get the money to the people who deserve it. And um, Mixcloud is doing that. So I recommend that. I forgot the beginning of the question, but the question is gone already. Amar, do you use the trick to change the key of the track so that you can mix it with other tracks for harmonic mixing? Yes, I rarely do this trick, but I do it if it sounds good. Because sometimes if you change the key of a track, which you can do in Tractor, which you can do, I believe, on the CDJs too, even automatically, sometimes the track sounds totally crap. It's just like what I explained earlier, like with the BPM differences, that that you can play a super fast track, super slow. With some it works, with some it doesn't. So you have to trust your ears there again. Zoom user, hey Chris, my mentor, thank you. How can I set up my Roland TB03? Oh, I told you this already. So was already answered with the MIDI in and MIDI out. Why is the open key, 7 inch is asking, why is the open key notation so often different from mixed in key? What's the best for finding the right key? Well, it's just two different, I think it's two different companies that came up with a new system. Open key is a different company than the mixed in key, and they both have their own little system. In the end, it's kind of the same, so don't really worry about it. It's like what is in open key a 12A is in mixed in key, I believe, a 3 with a big M. I think can be completely wrong, but it's correlates to exactly the same. So it's exactly the same idea. It's just two different companies who wanted to use different numbers for different notes. Iridi asks, hi Chris, I'm an Italian DJ and producer. I'm sorry that I can't pronounce your name. What is the key of your success? What would you do in place of an up and coming artist these days? Um, do edits. Do edits of your favorite tracks. That way you get into producing stuff. That way you get excited about playing these edits in your own home setup when you DJ. That way you develop your own sound. That way you're different than anyone else. Don't compare yourself to anyone else because it only brings you down. Use that energy that you would use to compare yourself and to serve the internet in doing your edits, finding great music to play. And even if it's only for two or four friends you play to, maybe the next party you play for 5 or 6 friends, and people will start to understand that you have your own style. So it's so important that you develop your own style that you believe in. That style can change, like it's open, anything can happen all the time. So my advice is spend less energy in your social media appearance. You can do that at any time. If you happen to be successful, like there has been, these moments. So Renato Cohen is a good example. You all remember Pontapa, the big track he released in the early 2000s, super big. He became really famous because of this track. How much time and investment would he have taken if we had social media back then in order to become as famous just by posting nice pictures? So invest more time in your music and in your style. Robert, hi, great stuff. You're talking so much time for us tonight. Yeah, we're already 2 hours in and I need to drink something. And the cameras are still rolling, yeah. How do do you prepare yourself for the techno world post Corona? How do you and the industry cope at the moment? Do you have any tips for us to be prepared when the doors open again? I have no fucking clue. It's really literally, I don't prepare myself. I try to stay alert. That means I constantly dig in new music. The Alone Together streams, I, I that I admit I haven't done one in a while, but it was because of my move and because of the skiing, and because of finishing a whole lot of other music. But that helped me to stay in practice in a way. Also forced me to find new music. Um, so I'm staying up to date. So I'm ready to go whenever it opens. But I do believe it's not going to be opening up at once. Like, oh, we're back. So it's going to start with like slow parties. Maybe here in Switzerland they start again with 300 people in a club. So you start to play small parties, and you need to get back into it. But honestly, I have no idea how that will feel. I've this is all new to us. So we're all in the same boat. Let's just see what happens. But just follow your passion, like listen to music, make edits, do all this, and let's see what happens when it opens up again. An anonymous attendee says it's the only Q&A on Aulart, or are there more coming? I can tell you, there's so many questions here, and we've been over 2 hours already. I will definitely speak to Aulart that we do another sessions with all of you. And because I see here that Hendrik is trying the MIDI channels 1 and 2, and it's not working for him. One controller gets a signal and some faders or knobs are reacting. The other K2 does nothing. Maybe it's your K2. Go into the settings. First look at your K2s, because if you're getting some reaction already, then you're at least on one controller at your right MIDI channel. There is different layers within the K2s as well. I recommend check the manual of the K2s and see if you're maybe in the wrong layer, then you're sending the wrong signals as well. And reset your K2s, put them into channel 1 and 2, not 15 and 16. I'm not sure why I was saying that. I had it once on 15 and 16, but yeah, all layers are activated, you're saying, but maybe that is the reason. Maybe you just should activate one layer, and which one that is, so try that. Okay, MIDI 1 and 2 working in the layout. That's great. Let's go for a couple more questions, and I think then we're good. Do you have any idea, 7-inch again, why my link is not synced with Machina on my up-to-date MacBook Air 2019 Mojave? It runs away. It runs away? Also, the routing from Tractor to Ableton with PSP42 is not in sync with Link. Ooh. The machine is using less CPU as Ableton. I'm not too sure. I as a standalone, no, I don't think that makes a difference if you use it as standalone or in Ableton. That is weird. That I can't help you with that. I'm sorry, but that has probably issues that are beyond your software. Maybe you have, I don't know, the Wi-Fi on or something like this. This is stuff, man. If you solve this problem, next week you have another one where nobody has any idea, because it's getting, at some point, sometimes setups get so complex that you run into issues where you just like think like, what, I'm making everything right, but it's not working. There is a simple solution sometimes to it, and you're just doing some setting wrong or something like this, but I can't tell you. Naf Nafsikya Bolsi, sorry. What's your routine before going live? Do you listen to something to pump you up or prefer silence? Um, I usually, when I'm in the hotel room before getting picked up, I usually try to not, at least not in the last half an hour, watch television. Silence. Even I try to meditate the last half an hour to just become completely still. Because once I feel I'm that, then I'm open to anything what's going on. If I watch a movie or if I listen to too much music just before I leave, then my mind is still rattled, and you go into a club and everything. So I want to kind of get everything easy and relaxed and chilled. From Arabia, we have another question. No, that just left us. Why? Hmm? Have you ever thought about using another DJ software other than Tractor? Daniel is asking. I've looked into Serato once, but I didn't really. It wasn't really my thing, and I worked so closely together with Native Instruments that I never really had 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 the desire to do so. Arnold Dika is asking, when you were just starting your career, did you have another job or you just were full time and entry level DJ? No, 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 absolutely not. Uh, I was at university for a while and then I left university to follow, let's say, the music career. But in the first 4 or 5 years as a DJ, I worked for record labels and I had a steady income as an office job in a record label, basically. And that was pretty good because you could make all those new connections working at a record label. And because of this, I became a resident at the Omen Club and so on. So it's all about building your network, building connections, meet with people, like find similar artists that make the same sound, get in touch with them, exchange music, exchange sounds. If somebody has already a record contract, maybe you can go via this person to the label because the label might not listen to your demo because they don't know you, and so on. So it's about building a network. The next Alone Together live stream will probably be here in Switzerland. Um, Yeah, and I have a studio here in Switzerland. You're actually seeing it right here. I actually brought everything over here in my little rave cave here in Switzerland. I already did one stream from here as well. You can find it all on my YouTube channel. Do you use earplugs while DJing? It's probably a good idea if I've never managed to do this. I use earplugs when I'm not DJing. So meaning when I'm at a festival, I always have earplugs in because that noise is crazy. But playing, I need to have the full effect. I was never able to have that full effect with earplugs in. But that's a good thing. I always try to keep my monitors at a level where I could still hear you. What? It's just part of the job, huh? Jola Nappe, Olanian, do you use another software like iTunes to organize your tracks library? You mentioned the colors with subgenres, very interesting. But do you have any structure to classify the tension of the tracks? And if yes, how do you make it? No, I'm not using iTunes to organize my tracks library. I solely basically use Tractor for this. But the way I do it is like, I go into these different platforms, maybe Hardwax, Tracksource, Beatport, Juno, whatever there is, and I buy these tracks and they end up in a folder. And then I take that. Oh, yes, I do use iTunes for one step. I'm not using any iTunes playlists, but I put this folder in my iTunes playlist in iTunes, so I have all the tracks, and then I listen to the tracks in iTunes. So sorry about the iTunes thing, but I'm not doing any playlists in iTunes that I then transfer. I'm just having these. I'm listening to these tracks in iTunes, and then I have another folder, and then the tracks that I actually end up using, which might not all be, maybe I buy tracks that I find in that moment cool, but when I listen to it back again once I bought them, I think like I don't want to use them. So then there's another filtering going from iTunes into this folder, and then this folder gets imported into Tractor. And then I have it in Tractor, and then I beat mark the tracks. I think I explained that in the masterclass. I beat mark the tracks and I put those beat mark tracks into playlists. And while I beat mark the tracks, I listen to them again. And that's why I kind of learn what kind of tracks it is. Deep, again, blue color, like red is more straight track. But with the tension of the tracks, I don't really classify that. It's roughly classified with my different playlists that I have. But otherwise, it's just, you got to remember it and just sometimes even be a little blind. Renato is asking, how do you find like those files to open your set or finish it to only have melody without kicks? Do you produce it? Do you produce your intros? Sometimes I do intros, yeah. Sometimes I'll just come up with a weird drone and I use this. But a lot of times, there's EPs sometimes have this weird extra track, which is just the sound of something, and I use those things. Let me. Oh, what about Raul Jericho is asking, what about the a new Model 1 mixer with an included sound card like Antelope inside. That won't happen. It's like a Model 1 mixer is completely packed full with stuff inside because it's analog. There is no space for any digital sound card, and it would make the mixer bigger, and that nobody wants that. And you want to keep it different because a Model 1 mixer with a built-in Outlab sound card would be way too expensive. No club would use this. It's way too niche. We thought about all that. It's just it's way too niche. It won't be um, viable for anyone. Manageable. Daniel Saley asks, have you thought about changing your setup and use different software and hardware? I've already answered that. Not really. Um, hey, Carl, I have an ARM EUCX card. I think it was your old card with. Why did you change it? Because D sub 25 is missing or something else? Yes, because D sub 25 is a different connector, which works amazing with the Model 1. It has a balanced connection, which makes the signal much better. I find it has only 3 cables to connect and everything is connected. So many things. The sound card is much better. And I find the RME sometimes was glitching. I'm using it here for my analyzer actually now. You play at ADE with Speedy J. I just literally heard 2 days ago that ADE will be happening, so I'm not sure what's going on at ADE. What do you think of Model 1 point? I'm going to do some quick answering session here. 1.4, do you think it is limited? It's a great mixer. It's maybe more affordable, so go for it. And Chris, community meeting after the pandemic, will work on that. So that is so far the questions that you all had, and I'm sure we're going to work on part 2 of this, but we've been in the over 2 hours. Again, let me all thank you so much for choosing that masterclass, and I really sincerely hope that you guys really got something out of this. And I see in the chat some cool. The CLR restart will happen soon, and yeah, thanks so much. Then thanks Aulart for organizing this. I'll talk to them to do this again. I will make sure that all of you get my first release on which I'm currently mastering here because I'm mastering my own stuff now and mixing as well, obviously, and producing it too. So it's all in one. Not sure if I'm good at it, but I hope, since I can't test it in clubs. So thank you all for this, guys. Thank you. That was fantastic, and really like to chat with you, and some of you I might see at my next Alone Together live stream. So Aula, thank you all, and good night for now. Good night from the mountains.